So which game modes did you find were the most effective when it came to pushing Frank? What would you say his strengths and his weaknesses are? So what is the best way to kind of like counter a Shelly or counter a Bull when you're faced with that 1v1 and you can't avoid it? Where would you rank that star power in terms of others in the game? You know, is it one of the best or somewhere in the middle or definitely one of the worst in your opinion? What is up, guys? My name is Ark and today is a beautiful day to Brawl, and I am so privileged to have someone that I've been waiting to get on the channel for the longest time today. Jeff is in the house. How you doing, buddy?
Well, I'm doing fantastic. Really excited to do this interview.
Yeah, man, it's been such a long time coming. If you don't know, Jeff was the second player in the entire world to reach 1,000 trophies with Frank last season, and he's here today to give us his top 5 best trophy pushing tips for Frank. So first and foremost, Jeff, congratulations. How did you find the push?
Thank you very much. It was actually quite easy, mainly because I had some really experienced players with me, and also because of Siege. I don't think anyone would have reached 1k Frank without Siege. It just would have been too hard.
Yeah, Siege is definitely becoming a bit of a fan favorite for the top players when it comes to trophy pushing, for sure. We'll come back to Siege in just a bit. First, tell us a little bit about Frank. What are some of his best attributes in Brawl Stars?
So the thing that makes Frank good is definitely his super, and his super is so strong. However, it is definitely really hard to actually hit because people can't just cancel it, and also the delay between when you press the attack and when it actually hits. So that's the hardest part about Frank. But if you're able to get his super to actually hit someone, it's almost a guaranteed kill because you're able to get 2 shots off, and also your teammates can also help you kill them. Yeah,
absolutely. It's like one of the most devastating supers in Brawl Stars, but one that is you got to be very careful when it comes to using to make sure that you time it right.
So his star power is definitely useful at sometimes, but this game, a lot of times you're not always like 1v2 or 1v3. So when you're on your own lane, you know, after you kill the player, you don't always have to, you know, kill someone else. So a lot of times you're just killing someone and the star power is just kind of useless. But in situations where you are, you know, like 1v2, it is definitely helpful for like extra 600 damage. So it's definitely useful to get, but definitely not one if you're like a free-to-play player. I definitely wouldn't just aim for that star power.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you know, where would you rank that star power in terms of others in the game? You know, is it one of the best or somewhere in the middle or definitely one of the worst in your opinion?
It's definitely like a little above average. Out of 10, I'll rank it like a 6 out of 10.
What would you say his strengths and his weaknesses are?
So strength is that he definitely has a ton of HP, and he can do a ton of damage. However, he does struggle really against like shotgunners and like Shellys. So if you're able to keep your range, he can be super strong, and once you get your super, he is like a really scary brawler. It's like Terra with your super. It just, everyone wants to avoid you.
Yeah, that's it. And just having your super and not even necessarily using it is actually a really solid thing to encourage that map control for your team. It's a really daunting thing to be on the opposing team and see an enemy Frank coming towards you with a super. So yeah, I completely get that. So which game modes did you find were the most effective when it came to pushing Frank?
Siege was definitely the best game mode that I think all of us pushed 1k in. He can work in Gem Grab and Brawl Ball, but it's just it's just not that great in those game mode metas. With all like the Shelly and the tanks that are played in the maps that he's good in.
Yeah, that makes sense. So Siege was predominantly, would you say, the best game mode that you were using Frank in regards to pushing trophies? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you play him anywhere else at all, or like would you suggest that if you're at a different level of trophies that he's viable in other game modes as well?
To where maybe like if you're below 400 trophies, he's so good in Brawl Ball, just because I feel like players aren't as experienced at like, you know, canceling supers and how to deal with Frank as much. But towards a higher up level, it is just he does struggle a lot with the like Brawl Ball metas. I would just play him straight up just in Siege if you have a really good team.
Which maps in particular would you suggest are the best in Siege for pushing Frank?
So the best ones are Nuts and Bolts and some assembly required. Bot drop is just way too open. However, if you're like, you know, below 400 trophies, it is definitely good for the sides. You can flank pretty well towards the sides, but you know, to like 400 trophy plus, players are aware of the grass. They will check it. So bot drop, I wouldn't play him. It's too much open space. For Nuts and Bolts, like the best comp I would say is Frank, Pam, and Barley, just really controlling. And for some assembly required, Frank, Pam, and Cole is so strong that basically a strategy there is just break all like the middle trees to make it all open, because Frank, Pam, and Cole just have like a lot of range. You can just basically push everyone back into their spawn.
I'm keen to hear your thoughts, as many of the top players have said that it needs to be reworked in some way. Maybe it's a bit overpowered. I'm keen to hear your thoughts on Siege and whether, in your opinion, does it need some work? Is it perhaps broken? Or
I definitely feel like Siege is broken, just in the fact that you can gain so much trophies, and it definitely, like, the matchmaking time does take a while, but I have like seen a lot of other players, like lower level players, who just say it's the worst game just because you're able to lose so much trophies in little time. But I feel like just because they don't exactly know how to play the game mode, and also just, yeah, it's a little confusing, complicated to play. But for the top players, it's just like the matchmaking time will take so long, and just saving that extra, 5 minutes to 10 minutes for pushing, it just, yeah, it's really good. And I would definitely balance it in some way. I'm not exactly sure how, but yeah, it's a really overpowered game mode.
It's a really tricky one, like you say, because, like, again, for those lower players, it can be really, really brutal in terms of pushing trophies. But for the more experienced players, they are able to kind of gain more trophies in a shorter space of time. So, yeah, it's a tricky one for sure. Absolutely. Well, let's jump into your top 5 tips then for pushing Frank. What's your number 5 best tip?
So my number 5 tip is try to avoid shotgunners, like Bo, Primo, Shelly. They're just, if they're able to get up close to you, you can't really do anything. They just deal so much damage, and they can cancel your super if you get it.
Yeah, and Frank's super being one of like his key components to being able to make a good amount of kills and dominate that side of things is a really important thing to sort of time really well. So what, in your opinion, is the best way to kind of like counter a Shelly or counter a Bull when you're faced with that 1v1 and you can't avoid it? What would you suggest is the best way to approach that situation?
It is to definitely keep your range, and it's also kind of, you have to know how much like shots they got off on you. So against like a Shelly, for example, you kind of have to be aware of how much super they have charged up. If they have it like really close, if you think they have it really close, then just try to not use your super, because if they get off like 1 more or 2 more shots, they might be able to just cancel it right away. But if you know that they just use your super or something like that, and you have your super and you're just supposed to super them, and you can kind of just chain your super and really just destroy them, because they're always stunned.
Yeah, so be paying very much particular attention to like how many shots they've already kind of got off, and if they might be close to their super, be very aware of that and kind of prepare accordingly, right?
Yeah.
Cool, makes sense, makes sense. Let's jump into your number 4 tip. What is the number 4 tip for pushing Frank?
It is to not spam auto aim, and the reason for that is because if the opponents are actually close up to you and you're using auto aim, they can actually dodge your attacks. And with your suit, and also just because his range is pretty big, so you can always aim to hit 2 players at once instead of just auto aiming, because auto aim doesn't go for 2 players, it just aims for 1 player. And sometimes when you auto aim, you might also hit like bears or turrets instead of the players.
Yeah, massively. That's a really solid point as well. You can't control that, and especially like in Showdown, if you're near a box, then you're going to end up hitting the box as opposed to a brawler, which is not where you want to be. Okay, bro, what's your number 3 tip then for pushing Frank?
So my number 3 is you can tank shots to push up to your opponents, or to like gain control of the map, because you do have a ton of health, so you can, depending on what brawler it is. If it's like a Colt, you definitely don't want to just tank all the shots. But if it's like against like a Jessie or Poco, they don't deal as much damage, and you have 8,000 health, so you can just really tank a bunch of hits to either grab a bolt or grab a gem or something like that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point actually, and I guess protect your teammates in the process. If the gem carry in your team, for example, is kind of looking pretty weak, then a Brock shot that's sort of tanked by a Frank can do wonders, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool, man. I hadn't really thought of it that way around, to be fair. I mean, obviously, you've got to be aware that you might feed their super a little bit, but it's way better to feed a little bit into a Brock than it would be to effectively have your gem carrier go down, right? So,
yeah.
Nice, bro. What's your number 2 tip?
So my number 2 tip is to keep your range. You have to kind of look at who you're going against. If you're going against, obviously, like a shotgunner, you want to not have them get up close to you, and Frank's attack actually reloads pretty fast, so you kind of just spam your attack to avoid them getting up close to you. But against like other brawlers that have like, let's say thrower or like a Poco or Jessie, it is definitely actually good to get up close to them, because like I said, like they don't do much damage and you have a ton of health. So you can just tank a bunch of hits without them actually dealing that much damage to you. It can just really destroy them up close.
Yeah, and I guess like what comes into that a lot is your ability to juke and kind of like dodge those shots. And you know, what other sort of tips do you have for like, you know, closing the gap for those long-ranged brawlers when you're faced with that sort of encounter?
So using the walls and the grass is definitely a really good strategy to just get up close to your opponents. If let's say you have like a super that you have just waiting in the bush and your opponents don't know that, sometimes you can even hit 3 players at the same time with your super. And so yeah, just use the walls. Can be just a really good way, because you're hiding behind a wall. Your opponents won't just come up behind the wall and try to kill you because you have so much health and so much damage.
Yeah, man, I posted a clip on Twitter quite recently where I did like, I think 3 consecutive Frank supers. It is the most rewarding thing that you can actually ever do in Brawl Stars. It's so rewarding, yeah. Okay, bro, what is your #1 best tip for pushing Frank in Brawl Stars?
So Frank is definitely really strong brawler, but you have to play really patiently with your supers, because it definitely has a delay between your attacks and your opponent. A lot of times when they see that you have a super, they'll try to juke it out. So for example, they'll try to pretend to go for a gem or something like that and then back out after, so you might miss your super. So you have to be really patient with your super. Wait until they're around like half weight of your super range so that they can actually escape it, and not super when they're at like the edge of it. And you can like we said before, you can even hide in the bush and wait for your opponents to get up close and super them when they're not expecting it. Yeah, you can just kind of hold your super with like having it be yellow, and then your opponents will just kind of back off instantly.
Yeah, totally. Like even like flicking it to yellow, I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, just showing that you've got it. It can be a really threatening thing for sure. Yeah, solid tips, Jeff. I think the viewers are going to really appreciate that and take all that knowledge into their trophy pushing in Brawl Stars. You're new to the channel, Jeff, so we're going to do something which is traditional here. We're going to ask you a load of like questions on the spot. They are very random.
All right.
Don't be phased by it. Just go along with it. And it's quick fire questions, so you got to answer really quick. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. What's your favorite smell?
My favorite smell, food.
Would you rather be too hot or too cold?
Too cold.
What annoys you the most?
I guess doing something I regret.
Yeah, makes sense. What's your biggest fear?
Heights, I guess.
How do you like your steaks cooked, or are you vegetarian?
I like it cooked, I guess, medium.
What job would you be terrible at?
Probably like office job. I just hate sitting around and doing the same thing over and over again.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Kind, somewhat smart, and generous.
Least favorite brawler?
Mike, just trash him.
What's your favorite brawler?
Mortis.
Thoughts on auto-aim in 1 word?
Remove.
Can't argue with that. Brawler most in need of a buff?
Carl.
Brawler most in need of a nerf?
Pam.
Do skins really equal wins?
100%.
That is correct. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the channel, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Man, you're welcome back anytime. Have you got any shout-outs for the people that you push trophies with to get to that 1,000, Frank?
Shout out to OG, and also I'm over 9,000. Yeah, they pushed me from 700 up all the way up to 1K, so yeah, big shout out to those guys. And you have your own YouTube channel as well. Give that a huge shout out, guys. I will leave links in the description. Make sure that you head on over to Jeff's channel. Send him a ton of love. So my YouTube channel is ThatGuyJeff. Make sure to go check it out. Yeah, man, I'll leave links in the description. Shout out your Twitter, your social media, all that good stuff, man. I only have Twitter, and my Twitter is @ThatGuyJeff3. One last time, Jeff, thanks so much for coming on the channel, man. Yeah, no problem. Really happy to do this interview. Yeah, man, you're welcome back anytime. Guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, head on down to the like button, grab it, and smash it. Until next time, keep calm, brawl on.